Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that power within you to do your deeper work in the world. I am so delighted to have our next guest here on the show, Sallay Kim, who is a retired U.S. Army intelligence officer. Thank you for your service. And a current principal of Serenity Event Solutions, an event planning company in San Diego, California, my own stomping grounds, who offers peace of mind every time. Sallay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And you are someone who has a lot on your plate. And you do not only service to our company and with your business that you have now, but also in volunteering. And it's an important aspect for you in terms of giving back. And I'd love to start with that because you actually have a boundary around it and you decide on how many that you're going to do. And I would love for you to share about what are your focus on volunteering right now and what is your boundary around that? Because I think it's so important that people, they want to give and sometimes overgive. And in terms of deciding what your priorities are, what's the parameters that you decide on that?
So I'm so glad you asked me about this because as an event planner, most people see me and they say, oh, Sallay, you could join our board and do this and do that. And they want help planning their galas and their events, which is fine. But I found that was happening more and more often. And so for me, I realized that leaving the service, I still needed to give back to the community. But I also realized that if everybody's asking for your assistance, you're going to run yourself a little thin. And so at that point, I made it that I decided, okay, 2 to 3 organizations a year. That's what I'll volunteer my time for. And it's got to be something that truly speaks to me and the veteran community and being able to give back to the veteran community is, my passion. It's what I truly love to do. And so marrying up my my event planning skills with my love of veterans, those are the organizations that I give back to. And each year I select 2 to 3, and some that have stayed on from that initial year that I chose them would include the Miramar National Cemetery Support Foundation. We help beautify the National Cemetery here in San Diego, as well as help out with, bringing memorials to the cemetery. We also host a Memorial Day ceremony as well as the Veterans Day ceremony. And so that is one of the things that I give back to. And currently I'm serving as the president of that foundation. There's also the Veterans Association of North County. It's up in Oceanside, and I help out each month with their local food drive. It's a drive-through food drive that they've been doing for the past 2 years that services all the veteran families in Oceanside with a need for food. And so between those two, and then there's one last one, and it's military and transition firefighter for a day. And we help service members transitioning from the service into fire services by streamlining the educational process, as well as helping them find their goals, their career goals in fire services. So I made that decision. I feel that between those 3 organizations, I'm able to just give back regularly. I'm passionate about it. I don't feel overwhelmed, and I'm, supporting the community.
I love it. I love it. And, one of the things that we like to share with our community is, what were some of those things that were disempowering to you along the way? And, you had mentioned before about the transition, right, from military service into the entrepreneurial world. I had a similar experience from the police world into entrepreneurship. And sometimes those are big leaps. And so I'd love for you to share, like, what were some of the challenges in making that transition?
So for the service, when you are in, you go to a new organization, and while you might be new, you're not necessarily foreign to anybody. You're wearing a uniform. Everybody's wearing a uniform. You have your name tag on it, so everybody knows your name and your rank when you walk into a room. They see your patches, where you served in combat, some of the specialty things that you've done. And so you walk into a room and you're greeted by your fellow brothers and sisters in arms. Well, when I left the service, I was walking into a room in a suit. Nobody knew who I was. If I didn't go and introduce myself, sometimes, people might not come and speak to me. So that was the first challenge that I felt or experienced physically. Just a completely different way of life and walking into a luncheon per se. So there was that. There's also, just being confident in your new space, because after 21 years in the service, you're so used to the support and the structure of the military. And then now on the outside, you've got to kind of find your way.
Right.
And so just building that and building my company and continuing to be gregarious and engaging and really just finding myself between that and moving to San Diego, because we were in the Washington, D.C. area. I kind of had to start all over again out here, just finding organizations and colleagues. We moved out here, and our real estate agent was the only person we knew.
Wow.
And so we really had to build a community around us. And I think my husband and I have been extremely successful in doing that, surrounding ourselves with just people that are, doing good things in the community.
Right. I love that. Well, and especially, and we'll get into Serenity, but when you talk about having an event planning, right, that involves people, and then COVID hits, right? And you mentioned about having being emotionally disempowered. And a lot of people don't speak to that. It's like how it affects things. And you made some really great pivots along the way. But I'd love for you to share kind of that journey and how that emotionally taxed you, and how did you look at that, and what was kind of your time frame because sometimes people are stuck in certain areas before they move to the next iteration of where they're going.
Fortunately, I think I wasn't stuck too long, because COVID hit, and some of the things that I had to do included canceling lots of reservations that we had at hotels and venues, ensuring that I was able to get my clients' money back. And so that month-long, maybe 45-day process was right as COVID hit. We had big conferences coming up in April. And so while emotionally I was thinking, oh, my career is over, I was so busy trying to take care of all of those things. By the time my clients came back to me and said, hey, Sallay, granted, this is all happening, but we still need to engage with our consumer base. And so help us find a way to engage with our consumer base. And so I went from canceling all of those, making sure I got all the money back for my clients, into finding platforms outside of Zoom that we were able to utilize for their events. And so I'd say it was about a month period in which I was thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe it's time to shut the company down. Who knows how long this is going to last? But hospitality as we know it, in-person events as we know it, is done for quite some time. And so just being able to make that pivot into virtual events was not necessarily something that I did purposefully, but it started looking that way, and I started doing it for all of my other clients as well. So I like most people during that time frame, I was devastated. Just where do I go from here?
Right. And I love how you went into this virtual production director where, people still needed support, right? However that looked like. And I'm just curious, because it seems like all the world went to Zoom. And I think at a certain point, people were like, I can't do another Zoom. And, there's also people trying to create these events where you're sitting in front of your computer for hours on end. How did you what other kind of platforms were you utilizing, and what ways were you helping people be engaged that allowed them to be present in a virtual way?
So there's, it seems like during COVID, there were a million and one platforms that showed themselves. There were even universities that were coming up with programs that we utilized initially. Uh, it took about 3 months of trying this and that and the other. We knew we didn't want to do Zoom because people were zoomed out. Um, one of my clients called it having Zoom butt.
I get it.
And it was just too much. But some of the other platforms that were out there, like VFairs and Entrado, are ones that we're still using to this day. And they're just a little more engaging, allowing people to do Q&A as well as see different rooms. We have like an exhibit hall. It was almost as if you were going to a conference down at the San Diego Convention Center with all the different places that you could go.
Mm.
And just having ensuring that there were little games that they could play, and the topics. I think your speakers had to be ready to speak to an audience that wasn't necessarily there, and their content had to be engaging. So it really kind of goes to that initially because that's the draw. People come to an event because of your speakers. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Well, and I think it encouraged everyone to kind of step up their game to have people be able to feel you, to have an experience with you, and that engagement is key, right? And that also ties into learning, right? I mean, if you're having good engagement, people are going to have good learning, they're going to have good experiences, and it
Absolutely.
has that ripple effect as far as what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd love to let's circle back around here to
Sure.
your event management company, Serenity. And how does Serenity help you control your OCD?
So I'm all about the details, and I promise you, there are a million and one details that go into any one event. Most people tell me I would never want to do with you what you do. Um, to me, it just comes naturally. It was all those years in the service. If you're not in command, you're planning somebody else's command. Everything from going to the field to airborne operations to a quarterly training brief was planned to the nth for success. And so, as I was about 15 years in the service, I realized, okay, when I leave the service, I don't necessarily want to do intel work anymore. This was my life all of these years, and now I want to choose what I want to do. And I kind of found my passion was event planning. I'd read this book by Poe Bronson, What Should I Do with My Life? And it was essentially, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so leaving the service would have been my here's my opportunity to choose what I want to do when I grow up. And reading the book, I realized, okay, my strengths are in event management. I didn't know event management was even a field at that point. But I started realizing, oh, well, I've got a lot of on the job training, if you will. Now I just need to go out and get an education. So I applied for a master's degree in tourism administration, finished that up, and I was ready for the world.
Yeah,
So
I love that you actually took the time to let yourself transition, to let yourself see what were your strengths, like what is it that actually worked for you, what were you interested in. I think that's an important step, and I think a lot of people don't actually allow themselves the time to figure that part out.
yeah, and I think that's what the beauty of that book was about. It's about, it's a bunch of short stories about people that have transitioned to their second career.
Mm.
Some that were successful, some that were in the middle of doing it, and some that were thinking about doing it. And so it was almost as if I was experiencing it through their eyes and then able to kind of apply it to myself. And it's a book that I recommend to all of my friends that are going through a transition, and it's one that I've bought many times. I think Poe should um, send me some of the residuals
Get an affiliate
because
account there.
oh, absolutely. It was just extremely helpful in that regard.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And you talk about like organizing and managing the chaos of events. And I had a laugh with this because, as a police officer, I've been in thousands of homes, and we only get called when there's chaos, when there's just so much happening out there. And there is such satisfaction about bringing order to chaos, to be able to take those steps in being able to change that and help that. And I think sometimes people don't realize, you've shared with me you're a behind the scenes kind of person. And when you're behind the scenes, you see so much that no one else sees. It looks like it's running so smooth and great out there, but behind the scene, it can be, this out of hand monster if you don't have some systems and processes and things in place. I'd love to hear some of your most like challenging, chaotic stories that some unexpected thing happened and you were able to bring it back to order.
So I love to call event management sausage making because that's what's happening. It's not pretty. I love hear what my clients envision in the very beginning and make that um, a reality. And the way to do that is to corral all the details. So I have certain items that I do for every single event. Like I always do a risk assessment. How risky is this event and what are ways that we can mitigate that risk? I always put together a plan for our meetings up front. You know, we're going to meet weekly. We're going to meet every other week up until the month before the event. And then we're meeting weekly. And there are you know, documents run of show that I'm creating from the very beginning and sharing with them. So none of it is a surprise. We're working through that document and building that document all the way through. I know that Murphy is always invited to my event because he's going to show up, whether he shows up early or late, he's going to be there. And so you can plan to a point and then it's all about execution. Have there been crazy things that have happened at my events? Sure, but nobody else knew they were crazy.
Right. Which is perfect, right?
Which is perfect, and it's all about, just keeping that smile on your face and working through it because nobody else knows that, oh, you were supposed to watch the sunset at 6:02 and here we are still in the middle of our event at
Right.
6:10, So it's just being able to roll with it once it's time to execute. You've done all the planning, you've shared all the plans, everybody knows what's supposed to be happening, but the guests don't necessarily know that something's gone wrong if it has. So
Right. Well, and just to elaborate on, because fear can come into play for a lot of people. Your personal fear of what's going on with the client, and you talk about the accountability and having a plan. I think having expectations is such a huge part, right? So that really gets rid of a lot of the fear is when you know what to expect and you know what to have happen. But as we all know, the best laid plans can have things that happen. Talk a little bit how you practice your response and have rehearsals and how that can help alleviate a lot of the fear.
yeah, so there are a few things to think about. Having been in military service, most military people have deployed by this point, and they do things every day that the average civilian doesn't. So with that said, as a police officer, former police officer, you would know that, right? So with that said, fear is just a different animal for us. We've been in situations where our lives were in danger. And so something on the, like an event, it just doesn't compare to that, right? But the way that I ensure, and again, this goes back to military training, the way that you ensure success is practice, 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 right? Rehearsals. We do a rehearsal for everything. Even when my clients don't want to do a rehearsal, I do a walkthrough. Just want to make sure that you understand what's happening. Accountability, to be accountable, to share what you're going to do really helps in containing that fear because sometimes you're able to talk through what that challenge might be. But fear, like I said, is just a different animal. you face something so severe, like jumping out of a plane and knowing that you might not survive that,
Right.
to everyday life, there's not as many things to fear.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's really the benefit to like any first responder kind of work is that your relationship to fear is so different. Because I can remember those nights at 2 a.m. walking in an alley, being in
mhm,
new surroundings, having someone, jump out at you and just having to react, being shot at, right? It's like, how
yeah,
do you explain to someone what that's like to hear a bullet go past your ear? And, so your relationship to fear changes. And I think that actually gives you an edge to be able to help alleviate fears that they're just different fears, right? It still feels
yeah,
sometimes life and death to them, right? That they feel like a
mhm,
lot's riding on the line with whatever they're doing. And I think being able to comfort people, give them insight, give them structure, all of these things allows them to be more successful and to move through their fear. So I think that that's
exactly.
really, really important. And, you talked about coming to San Diego and not knowing anyone. I love how you talk about who you keep company with. And I really love, someone had told you about your inner circle and how you had to kind of tidy up your life and make things a little
Yeah,
bit different. I'd love for you to speak to that because I think who we spend our time with is very impactful, and it radiates not only in how people perceive us, but who's got our back and who is supporting
yeah,
us along the way in the journey.
very true. A lot of our friends are just accomplished in their own right. They're passionate about what they do. Um, what happened for me is I read a book, or maybe I read a quote earlier in my career, probably in my mid to late 20s, about how who you spend your time with is a reflection of who you are. And every time your friends go out, they're representing you, right? And you're representing them. And when I figured that out, I realized, oh, my circle needs to be cleaned up just a little bit, because there were some people in there that weren't a true reflection of how I like to live my life.
Mhm.
I try to be a very positive person. Um, and and I choose my happiness. And when you're around people that don't choose their happiness or are very negative, it pulls you down. When I let that go, I found so much more happiness.
Right.
So the friends that we have are just amazing, amazing people. I think if there's ever anything that I need here in San Diego, or depending on where I need something in the world, I have someone that I can reach out to, or that can reach out to me, that can help in that regard. And so we're just very extremely fortunate. And then the fact that San Diego is such a big town, but it's such a small town when it comes to the connections here. So
Right.
we've been very fortunate to have chosen this location to be.
Oh, I love that. My close circle is everything to me. And, they say if you just have a handful of really good friends, you are blessed and have everything. And I think really that made the difference, I believe, for people in the last couple years when there's so much unpredictability. And, we talked about the whole, emotional distraughtness and, all the different things that can happen. I think who you have around you and who you surround yourself with, even just having a positive outlook on it, like, hey, whatever's thrown at us, we're going to come out on the other side. We're going to find a way, make a way. What are we going to stand for? What's important in our freedoms, and just all of the different conversations that are to
Yes.
be had. That I think that when you've got the circle of people that have the same values and outlook, makes such a different experience in how you are in life. And I think we saw that also a lot with people who were so isolated that that's where the depression came in, and suicide rates were high and all of these things because people were isolated and they didn't have a support system. And so I think we're really
Mhm.
seeing in real time what difference it makes with who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, and it's not to say that we can't have a difference of opinion, because I don't want anyone to walk away from this and
Yes.
think that, oh, I only surround myself with like-minded people. No, not in that regard. We can definitely differ in opinion, but it's how you carry yourself out there that matters.
Yes, great distinction. I think that's well, and we're seeing now with a lot of censorship. It's like, since when could you not just have, a heated discussion and go, oh, I just learned something different, right? If we have everyone who just believes everything we believe, we never get perspective, right? We never get
Exactly.
to add more to our experience and be able to have that. So I think that's a great distinction. And well, and also you're like with your friends, I love accountability is a theme that moves through a lot of different aspects of your life. And you and I are both enthusiasts of having good physical health. And we got to talk a little bit about boxing, and coming to find out we're going to both go, you already train at the Steel MMA, and I'm looking to go there myself to get some boxing. And I think it's important to have a variety of different things that support your health and that you actually enjoy it. And so I'd love for you to talk about some of the structures that you've created to connect with your friends to actually help in your physical pursuits.
Oh, absolutely. So it's funny because my friends may not necessarily like this, but for anything that I do, I ensure that I'm working out with somebody. So each day of the week is dedicated to a different friend and perhaps a different type of workout. Steel MMA is amazing, Diane. You're going to love it down there. Carl and the team down there are just, I mean, the confidence that you gain from boxing, learning to box. I've been there now for about 4 or 5 years, I want to say, and my husband's been training Muay Thai even longer. But it's a family down there. Unlike any gym that you've been to or you're going to go to, uh, you'll you'll develop these relationships with all these wonderful people, and you'll learn how to box. But for me, each day of the week I have a different friend that I work out. In fact, I have a workout scheduled after this. Love to ride, love boxing. I think if you find the things that you enjoy, you'll stick to it. So between boxing, yoga, and cycling, I'm staying pretty fit. And my sister, she's a retired Army nurse, she loves to say, motion is lotion. And so I keep that in mind and keep moving every day. As we age, this is really what we have to look forward to, right? Is
Yes.
ensuring that we keep this vessel moving
Uh,
nicely.
Yeah, I love this. I like to call them walk and talks with my friends. Like, I'm not someone who just hangs out on the phone. It's like, if we want to talk and get together, it's like, okay, am I meeting you at the ocean? I'm meeting you at a park. Like, where am I meeting you? And, there's actually a lot of scientific evidence about if you are in motion and you have conversations, it unlocks a different level of creativity and allows you to expand more ideas. So I actually do a lot of the walks even with my clients as well, because when they're moving, they are thinking literally outside the box and in a different way.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways, and especially when I hear people go, "Oh, I don't have time to exercise."
Yeah.
Well, connect it
Got to
in with
make
your
it.
social, right? Connect it in
Yeah.
with, other activities and things that you can do. And I do think it's important to have something that you love to do, because, a lot of people who say, "Oh, well, I go to this one class, but I hate it." It's like, why do you go to that? Like,
Don't go.
don't
Don't go.
go. Like, totally
Find
find
something else.
something. Yeah, you got to find
We could
something that
go
you
play some
absolutely
golf
love.
too. Yeah,
Say that
we could go play some golf too, Diane.
there
I
you
mean,
go.
it's so, especially if you're walking, you could do
Right.
9 holes and get in some time with your clients, like you said, or dear friends. Love to do that as well.
Definitely. I have my clubs. I haven't, I need to dust them off. I haven't actually gotten out
Let's
there
do it.
okay, let's do it. Okay, we'll make that commitment. We'll get out there and we'll wing it. And that's another aspect, right? I haven't played in years. And a lot of people would be like, okay, let me take 100 lessons first or figure it out. But, if you just get into the experience and for the fun of it and just do the best you can always perfect things along the way, but don't let them stop
Absolutely.
you. Like, allow you to continue to move forward and have the fun experience. And that's where the good stories come from anyway.
Very true. Very true. Oh,
So good. Well, one of my favorite things I like to ask guests on the show is, when we talk about environments, we have a different experience in our bedroom versus our kitchen or our office. What is your favorite room in your home and why?
I would say my favorite room in my home is wherever my husband and puppy are.
Are they moving targets, or they tend to hang out in one room?
We tend to hang out in the same places. So, for instance, yesterday it was football and baseball all day. And so we were watching football and baseball and kind of in the great room together all day. Yeah, I would say that's probably my favorite place. We're still in the middle of getting all of our landscaping done.
Mm.
So I think the backyard, because we face the canyon on the backside of the house, will become our new favorite location. But yeah, wherever those two are,
Fun. I
make
love
me the
it so
most
much.
happiest.
I love it. I just think it makes a difference, just like the environments we create around us that, do they inspire us and how do we live in those spaces? So I always
I
think
do
it's
feel
it's interesting.
inspired. I do feel inspired by those two.
So good. I love it. Well, I know that a lot of our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they do that?
You can reach out to me. My email address is, well, actually, the easiest way would probably just be to find me on LinkedIn, Sallay Kim. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, but my website is the easiest. So serenityes.com. Serenity Event Solutions is what that stands for. And again, we offer peace of mind every time.
I love it. And we'll have all those links with the show so people be able to check that out and be able to connect with you. And, as I had shared with you, our theme for this year is people who are being a force for good. So how is it that you are being a force for good?
I think by sharing, being able to volunteer within the community, especially the veteran community, being able to be of service to them is truly what I think my force for good in this world is. Um, and just being a happy person, being able to share that happiness with others. So,
Yeah, I love that so much because I think who we're being actually has such a bigger, ripple effect in the world. And just being a happy person is huge, right? Because we don't realize that
yeah.
how many people aren't. And when they see an example of that, I absolutely believe that that reflects out into the world. So I want to just thank you so much for your wisdom and your contribution and your service and your continued service that you do. You're definitely a force for good. And I just want to thank you, Sallay, so much for being here on the show.
Thank you, Diane. It's truly been a pleasure being with you this morning.
Thank you. And for our listeners out there, if you have any questions of either Sallay or myself, make sure that you tag us, ask those questions. We're happy to support you. And please share this. Get this out in the world. It's important now to look at mindset, to look at how you're spending your time and what it is that you're doing. And this is a resource to be able to help you in doing that. So if you've not subscribed, please do that, review, and get it out there in the world. And until we connect again, live your spotlight. Bye for now. Bye-bye.